The following podcast may contain adult language and conversations revolving around situations not suitable for immature audiences. Spoilers and general political incorrectness can often be expected, so listener discretion is advised.
They must be destroyed on sight!
Welcome once again to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, a movie podcast. Normally, primarily hosted by Lee. Say hi, Lee.
Hello.
And I'm usually the co-host, but today we're going to let me lead. Yay, yeah. Or not. I don't know. It might lead for a slightly different podcast, but we'll see. Our friend Paul may or may not be joining us. We haven't heard from him yet, but if he joins in, then we will see what he has to say about sexy movies, sex comedies.
Yeah.
We're talking about 3 sex comedies from the 80s to early 90s tonight. We're going to do Ski Patrol and Zapped Again, and both of those titles have exclamation points at the end in case you're Googling. Because when you Google Zapped, it turns out there was a 2014 Disney Channel movie also called Zapped. That's not the one we're talking about. That's probably for a future podcast, maybe. Like we'll talk about Disney Channel films.
They keep their clothes on in that film.
Right. Which ironically, they do in Ski Patrol as well, which I had forgotten. But we'll get into that here shortly, I think. Thanks for doing this, and hopefully we're going to enjoy me leading today. But I think first, do you want to start talking about the actor that we've chosen to talk about today?
Yeah, recent sad news, Robert Zedar, very well-loved genre actor as far as horror, sci-fi, exploitation films go, passed away at age 64. He's very well-known, mostly not only because of his movies, but of course of his prominent jawline. He was a guy who was born with cherubism, which is a medical condition resulting in enlarged jawlines. Some people don't have as extreme a case as Mr. Zedar did. Before he was an actor, he was a Chicago police officer. He briefly worked as a Chippendales dancer, believe it or not. Yeah.
I do believe that.
He was a big guy. I mean, he was 6'2". In his prime, he was very well built. When you look at his early films, his jawline, while big, I mean, it was not as prominent as it was later in life when he got older, maybe put on some weight and stuff like that. It was saying here on Wikipedia, something I didn't know about him, as of 2012, Robert Zedar had appeared in more than 60 films with at least one appearance per year in 27 of the last 29 years of his career. So he only missed 1986 and 2001 were the only years he didn't do any films in that period. Basically, his career kind of winded down a little bit in the last few years because he suffered a serious back injury in 2002, and that's sort of why he went a little bit out of the limelight. He's probably most well known for the Maniac Cop films, Maniac Cop 1, 2, and 3. I think the series started in 1988. That first film actually has all kinds of genre stars in it. It has Bruce Campbell in it, Tom Atkins, Richard Roundtree, Shaft in that one. Yeah. Anything you want to start off with on?
On Mr. Zedar, really, I was looking through his filmography, and there are films that, again, I've seen him in, but I don't recall. For me, he will always be the guy from Soul Taker. Mostly because I did see that film before it was an MST3K film, but now I love the MST3K version. And he was also in another film done by Mr. Sinister 3000, Future War. But I don't remember him from that. I remember him as the the Spectre of Death from the terrible 1991 or 92 film Soul Taker, and that's my memory of him. The mentor to Joe Estevez.
Yeah. He was that guy who basically, he's one of those actors who did like bit parts here and there and everything, like we were talking about last week with 2 weeks ago now with Lance Hendrickson. where sometimes he'll just jump into films for bit parts and stuff like that. And yeah, he was in Soul Takers, The Angel of Death. He was in the sequel to Hell Comes to Frogtown, taking over for Roddy Piper in the lead role of Sam Hell in Frogtown 2.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I've not actually seen that one, but I know I do want to see it. He was in Tango and Cash.
And that's one of those films I know I watched a bunch as a kid, and I Googled it, like Robert Zedar, Tango and Cash, and I remember seeing him in the movie, but I do not remember his role at all. Like, Tango and Cash is probably a film we should talk about on this podcast at some point.
Yeah. He beats the fuck out of Sylvester Stallone, and what's the name of the character in Tango and Cash? Face is the name of his character in Tango and Cash. My favorite role of his, though, is the role of Yamashita from Samurai Cop, which is one of the most unintentionally hilarious films ever made. He is supposedly playing a Japanese basically mobster, but of course Robert Zedar is not Japanese, does not look anything like a Japanese person. but the movie is absolutely hilarious, and it's one I intend to cover at some point on this podcast. It's just so goddamn bad that it's good. But there are so many films of his that I have not seen, but he's a guy that's popped up in all kinds of stuff, and he did
a lot of TV too, like in the 80s. Feels like he's one of those guys who's just kind of been in a lot of stuff. He's just, he was a working actor, and I'm glad that we kind of used this segment to talk about some of these guys. I think it's a really good use of the segment if I can pat us on the back for a moment. I really like the idea of looking at some of these guys and who have had long careers, but not necessarily in like big name people that you're just instantly recognizable. So nicely done. I have a lot of respect for those working actors.
Yeah.
Which we're going to talk about a few today in this podcast.
Yeah. But I'll just say this: rest in peace, Mr. Zedar. You will be missed, and we can move on to. I'm thinking we should move on just briefly to comments that we got in the last couple episodes we did.
Did Paul comment on his own episodes? That's the...
No.
Okay. It'd be funny if he was commenting on those episodes as well.
Yeah, these are comments from real people.
People we care about, not Paul.
Yeah. We had a comment from a mutual friend of Paul and mine's from Beardweeds United, Greg. He just basically mentioned briefly that he liked Dead Snow 2 better than he liked Dead Snow 1. He found Dead Snow 1 boring, whereas he enjoyed the comedy of Dead Snow 2. We have a couple comments here from our episode we did, episode 10, Beyond the Black Rainbow. More human than human. He says, I don't know what this is or where this comes from, but anything featuring the greatest horror film ever gets my approval. And I think he was referring to Dawn of the Dead, not Beyond the Black Rainbow. I think he was just referring to the name of the podcast more than anything else.
Nice.
Yeah. And he also says, and I can tell you, Canadian film is fucked. Enemy, BTRB, Videodrome, scanners, bloody scanners, man. We have too much time on our hands up here. All right, and I agree because I'm Canadian, so I actually do know about Canadian genre films as far as horror goes. But thank you very much for the comments, people, and we encourage anyone to send in more comments. We love comments, so
especially those of you who agree with me. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Sure. So thanks a lot for everybody for commenting, and moving on into our discussion of stuff we've purchased and watched and etc. lately. You want to start with that?
Yeah, I'll just try to go through this very quickly. There is a bunch of stuff I've basically received in the mail and watched in the last week or so. I got two Lucio Fulci films, The Beyond and Host by the Cemetery, both on DVD. At some point, we'll have to do a Fulci month or something like that, just to talk about his films, because they're fairly unique as far as both horror films and Italian horror films go. I'll just leave it at that for now. I got a favorite scream queen of mine from the 1980s and 90s, Linnea Quigley. I got this Grindhouse triple feature, which basically features three films by her, or starring her: Deadly Embrace, Nightmare Sisters, and Murder Weapon. I've not seen Murder Weapon or Deadly Embrace. I basically got this for Nightmare Sisters because it has Linnea Quigley, it has Michelle Bauer, and it has Brinke Stevens, all prominent scream queens from the era, and just lots of nudity and lots of fun. So that's basically the reason I picked that one up. I also picked up, and this is probably the best purchase I've made in quite a while, Sorcerer from 1977, a William Friedkin movie starring Roy Scheider. Excellent fucking film about these guys from different parts of the world at the end of the ropes. Basically, they have to get away. They all end up meeting together in a unnamed South American country, I think, and they end up taking on the task of transporting 2 trucks full of nitroglycerin across the jungle.
I've actually seen this film.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, because I do want to.
Excellent, yeah.
Yeah, I want to review it at some point. One of the most harrowing films I've ever seen, just for the scenes of them going across that fucking rope bridge. I was on the edge of my seat. Absolutely brilliant. And I'll just leave it at that. I watched a couple movies this past week. I saw Wolf Cop, which is excellent. It's essentially.
It feels like a film that Robert Zedar should have been in, honestly.
It's essentially along those sort of Toxic Avenger kind of idea, where you have a hero that violently kills bad guys and stuff like that, but in this case, instead of Toxic Avenger, he's a werewolf, and the werewolf effects are really good, and there's a scene where you see werewolf dick, basically.
Nice. Werewolf cock.
Yeah.
I'm down for that, yeah.
Yeah. I saw The Rover with Guy Pearce. It's the same director who did Animal Kingdom. He teamed up with Guy Pearce again in this one, and it's sort of like a more realistic Mad Max. It's not Mad Max with all the car chases. It's, the sort of the stark reality of what dystopian Australia might actually be like if there was an economic crisis where the whole world basically just went into a recession, very, very good. I really liked it. And the final thing I saw was A Walk Among the Tombstones, recent Liam Neeson film. People are probably more familiar with his Taken films as of late, as far as his action stuff goes. This is more of a slow-burning kind of detective film, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. I really enjoyed it. I like his acting anyway. I'll watch him in the Taken films, even if all 3 films are exactly the same fucking film over and over again.
Right.
Yeah, but A Walk Among the Tombstones, a Lawrence Block novel adapted into a movie. Lawrence Block is a very good writer, as far as I'm concerned. And it's a really good detective piece. I really, really enjoyed it. So I'll watch any fucking detective film, honestly. So, and I really enjoyed it. So it was really good.
Awesome. Yeah. When you were talking about the what's the Guy Pearce film again?
The Rover.
The Rover. That sounds really interesting. I keep mentioning books on this movie podcast, but I actually read a book a few years ago and I was just Googling the title because the title escaped me immediately. But it's a novel called Liberation, Being the Adventures of the Slick Six After the Collapse of the United States of America. Written by a guy named Brian Francis Slattery, who's one of these guys. He's kind of an up-and-coming novelist. He owes a lot to, when we talked about Inherent Vice a couple weeks ago, he owes a lot to Thomas Pynchon, but he's more readable, he's more accessible than Pynchon. He's also a kind of gifted economist in his day life, and he basically the assumption that he makes, or the kind of thing that happens, is that it's not like the apocalypse is caused by some massive die off like zombies or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's essentially an economic collapse, and where the story goes, I mean, it's definitely has a lot of kind of pulp origins, kind of elevated into art, sort of thing. It's a very weird book, but I mean, it's like slavery returns to America because, of course it does, and it's because people are just poor and they just sell themselves into slavery essentially. So really, really interesting. Just kind of wanted to throw that in there since it reminded me of that, and worth a read if you're at all interested in that sort of thing.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, The Rover is very similar to that situation. I mean, essentially, I don't even know if they say the entire world is in the same shape as Australia, because throughout the film, the main character, played by Guy Pearce, is trying to barter with people and stuff like that. They're asking for US dollars, not Australian dollars. So, he's trying to buy gas, he's trying to buy food at these places that are, boarded up and stuff, so they can't be robbed. It's just like a totally lawless wasteland where the occasional Humvee full of military tries to keep law, but pretty much to no avail. It's very interesting.
This sounds really interesting. I'm definitely gonna watch this soon and check it out, and maybe we'll talk about it on a future episode. That's 3 films already that we've talking about on a future episode. So me, very quickly, the things that I've seen in the last the last week or so, both theatrically. I actually kind of randomly saw the new Will Ferrell, Kevin Hart film, Get Hard, which was it makes pretensions of kind of being about kind of economic disparity in Los Angeles, but it's really just a broad and pretty amusing comedy. It's kind of pretty much what you expect to get. It does have some of that, kind of 80s style action comedy vibe to it, especially towards the end. It's pretty effectively put together. It's about 90 minutes long. I laughed in quite a few places, and it's worth a see. It's worth a look see, and Alison Brie is very sexy in it, if that's the sort of thing that you go see in movies.
She's very sexy in just about anything she does.
She's, in fact, if you Google Alison Brie Get Hard, you will probably see images that are will make you decide whether you want to see the film for that or not. It's probably going to be worth a rental at some point. It's cute. The other film that I saw was the Alamo Drafthouse was airing Pleasantville as a one kind of Sunday afternoon matinee sort of thing, and that's actually one of my personal favorite films. And so my wife and I went out on Sunday afternoon last Sunday and saw it, and it's astonishing. Have you seen this film?
That's the black and white one with Tobey Maguire, and the world slowly becomes color.
You're right, where the teenagers are trapped in a kind of 1950 simulacra. Apologies for stumbling over that word. These 2 teenagers kind of trapped in this 1950 sitcom world, and kind of it plays very true to that reality. It is this kind of Klein bottle universe, but it doesn't really talk about it in those terms. It's this very kind of isolated world, and what happens when things are allowed to change, and kind of the way that our psychology works and the way that people behave in that kind of situation. I think it's one of those films that is, it was released when I was 18 years old, and I saw it theatrically when I was 18 years old. It's probably one of those films that, not to put too highfalutin a point on it, but one of those films that probably has influenced my life as much as any film ever. Honestly, just philosophically and in terms of the ideas, and I do put that as one of my favorite films. And I got to see it with my wife, and she also loves it, so it was really wonderful. And I would highly recommend that if you're. A lot of people, kind of make it's not a perfect film. A lot of people will complain it gets a bit didactic, it's a bit simplistic maybe, but I think for the point that it's trying to make, and for the in this kind of hyper-realized stylistic universe, you can kind of defend a lot of those points. And I think the performances, William H. Macy, Joan Allen, Reese Witherspoon, J.T. Walsh, and I think one of his very last roles. J.T. Walsh would be another person that we could talk about on this podcast at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
Lots of great actors in it as well. Lots of faces that you just would recognize, like because this movie is now 17 years old,
Yeah.
and so you run into, like, I know that person from somewhere. The woman who, and I didn't get her name, I forgot to write it down, but like the woman who plays one of the lead actresses in Psych, the USA TV series. Maggie Lawson, that's her name, has a small role in that film, for instance. And there are a lot of people kind of like that. Paul Walker is in it.
Oh, yeah.
And Paul Walker is quite good in it. Like, he has a pivotal, really important, but small role. So anyway, and Jeff Daniels, this cast is phenomenal, and there's a lot of great stuff in it. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. I think it's worth watching.
It is a good movie. I haven't seen it in a long time. Like it was one of those ones where I saw it once and then basically moved on. But it was a really good movie. Yeah. So it was something I should probably watch again at some point.
My beating liberal heart just loves it. It's just one of those. It fills me with joy.
This is Quentin Tarantino, and if you made a movie in the 1960s or 70s, I've probably stolen from it. But there's one thing I can't steal from, and that's the greatness of They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, a movie podcast. Yeah.
Moving on from this brief discussion of racism and politics and repression, how'd you like to move on and talk about some titty movies?
Let's talk about titty movies.
All right. So let's get started. We're going to start off with a film from 1990. It's called Ski Patrol, and the thing that I because I suggested this as sort of a running topic for a little while. Because these are the kind of movies that I grew up on. Like, I've seen a ton of these. Movies that really existed. They're cheap comedies. They're made to put some female nudity on the screen and enchant 12-year-old boys. And this is a genre that really doesn't exist anymore because now there's the internet. And it's telling that after about 1994, 95, you just don't see these films made anymore.
Yeah.
And when you do, they're kind of deliberate throwbacks. You really don't see this kind of idea. But when I think about these films, like the first one that comes to my mind is Ski Patrol, which is interesting because Ski Patrol really doesn't. It has no nudity. There's no, it's a lot of these films kind of aired on like basic cable and bowdlerized versions, and those are the versions that I would just watch all the time because it was just on TV. And so sometimes it's funny where I'd see the cut version first, and then later on I thought, oh, there were supposed to be tits in that movie, So it's funny, like when I think about these, Ski Patrol is kind of one of the first ones I think of because I watched it a bunch as a kid, or as a kind of young man, 11, 12, 13 years old, and didn't really think like there's really not any sex in this, but I still think it's kind of a cute movie, and it has some really interesting casting. So now that I've kind of set the stage for like how this really doesn't fit the theme that we're going for, what did you think of Ski Patrol?
Well, I mean, it doesn't fit the theme, but it does at the same time because it has all the basic elements that these films tend to have. This was done by the same people who did the Police Academy series.
Another series I grew up on, so.
And although this resembles the later Police Academy films, then it does like the first two or so that actually had nudity. But this one just sort of sits more back on its gags, sight gags, jokes, innuendo. There's plenty of innuendo, but there's no nudity at all. It's kind of fun. Like it's some of the jokes are actually. I found myself laughing watching it. I hadn't seen it in quite a while, and I just rewatched it this week for the podcast, and I was like, okay, I remember that. Like, I remember really liking Leslie Jordan's character. I thought he was pretty amusing. I think he basically made a career out of playing this character.
On TV and in movies, and apparently on stage. I was looking up his biography when I was. And Leslie Jordan's another one of those people that, like, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, then you might not recognize the name, but then you look at his picture and you go, oh, that guy, Yeah,
basically the diminutive, Southern-speaking, vaguely homosexual character.
Well, he is actually gay in real life, so
but I mean. But the movie,
they don't play him as gay. Like, he doesn't say, "Oh, I'm totally queer," but he definitely plays that kind of mincing stereotype of a gay man to some degree. of the Southern gay man. He is actually from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yeah.
So, which
but
I know
yeah,
that city quite well.
this film does have some interesting names in it. I mean, George Lopez in a very early role as this.
Yes.
The stereotypical Latino character who throws dynamite and shit around, and
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, pretty crazy. It's like, oh, is our explosives expert, and he literally rides in on a snowdo, a snow scooter, whatever you call it, a snowmobile.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Just bashes down a door, and he's like got a dynamite stick that turns out to be fake, and like it's that kind of movie. It's like, oh look, it's whatever his name is, Rodriguez. I want to call him Rodriguez, but
there's actually several scenes of just people going through doors, whether on fucking snowdoos or just in skis. There's also Ray Walston as Pops, and this goes back to the formula. Like, this formula is basically used for almost every, let's say, like a Bikini Drive-In, Bikini Car Wash, those sort of films where
we gotta save the ranch, you know.
Yeah, we gotta save the what have you. Even Meatballs 4 is the same formula.
I'm glad you were the first one to mention the Meatballs franchise when we're talking about these films, because I could have a long discussion about the Meatballs quadrilogy if we're ever.
We might make that an episode, actually. But yeah, Ray Walston plays Pops. I mean, I think half of these movies,
Pops,
half of these movies, they're either called Pops or Gramps or Dad or some shit like that. Ray Walston, very good character actor. I've liked him in everything I've seen him in. He's probably best known for Fast Times at Ridgemont High as basically the teacher who wasn't going to take shit from Sheen Penn's character. Martin Mull is in this as Maris. He's the bad guy, the developer trying
the land developer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and this film was parodied in. I mean, essentially, I can't imagine that this wasn't really on their mind. There was an episode of South Park where this was essentially the exact same plot, and you get the like rich asshole skiers, and there's like a land developer, and we got to save the ski resort, sort of thing. And
that South Park episode also parodies probably the best known ski exploitation film, which is Hot Dog the Movie, which is really more about the competition between the characters than it is the actual the developer trying to take the place and they're trying to save it and shit. Yeah, so.
One more cast member you didn't mention that I thought was really interesting is Paul Feig. Paul Feig is in this movie, who would go on to co-create Freaks and Geeks with Judd Apatow. 10 years later, and is now a very hot in demand director of comedies. He directed Bridesmaids, and he's doing the new Ghostbusters and a lot of other stuff. Really, really talented guy, and it's kind of funny because watching it again, having not watched this film in 20 years or so, I kind of remembered a lot of the Stanley character, kind of being the breakout star to some degree, but I'd forgotten how much, the lead in this movie has, no charisma whatsoever.
No.
Stanley's really the one you're watching, and then some of the other characters, but it's interesting how bland the lead is, following in the footsteps of Steve Guttenberg, but, when you're the lesser rate Steve Guttenberg, when you're the person to go to when Steve Guttenberg isn't available,
When you're a low rent Steven Guttenberg, you're in trouble. The standout character for me in this whole thing though is Sheen Sullivan, Suicide, the character of multiple personalities. that was probably where the best jokes came from in the film too. It was
he's definitely got the best gags. And it's he's a big part of the movie. He's arguably driving a lot of the plot just because he's kind of creating disasters that the ski patrol has to go and fix. I think the one thing, if I was going to sum up this movie or kind of my response to rewatching this movie, it was, wow, George Lopez and Paul Feig are in this, and that's awesome, and they're both kind of really good in it. And George Lopez got to do his Rodney Dangerfield impersonation.
He did a bad one. The other guy, Iceman, T.K. Carter, is the stereotypical black funny guy, does all the impressions.
Yes, he even does an Eddie Murphy impression, which is pretty awesome. Yeah. He's the cut rate Michael Winslow
Yeah,
If we're going to go by the Police Academy metaphor. It's funny how much this really does just rip off the Police Academy formula, up to and including the point that there's a ton of action in this. Like, there like really well photographed like ski action, and I was kind of amazed at the because it could have looked really shitty and nobody would have really cared that much.
Yeah, I think you'll find if you watch these sort of ski-ploitation films, if I can coin that term. I don't know if someone else already has.
I'm sure someone's already done it.
Yeah, I can't remember one that I've seen that did not actually have good skiing footage in it. Like it is like essentially the padding of the film. Generally, everyone I've ever seen, from Hot Dog the movie to Ski Patrol, Ski School 2, all these films, they have good skiing footage if you're into that sort of thing.
I mean, it was just kind of funny to me how much I like, because I did watch this movie a bunch when I was a kid, and then kind of coming back to it and being like, now as an adult, and I mean, I've never gone skiing, so I have, but like this. Like everyone at that resort is like an Olympic quality skier. It's there are people doing like these crazy backflips and shit, and I'm like, that is pretty impressive actually. Like, wow. Anyway, that was one thing that was probably the biggest thing that struck me watching the film is how it is kind of vaguely plotless. It really just kind of, it's very lackadaisical in the way that it follows its plot. That there is a ton of there's like a musical number in the middle of the movie where there's just a riding down a ski slope in like inner tubes and stuff, and that it's just, there's a lot of action that's actually pretty well handled and pretty well shot. The director of this, and I'm gonna bring it right back. The director of this actually went on. Do you know what he's doing now?
I don't. I actually looked this up earlier today, but I don't remember. It's the booze.
The director is actually working for like the Disney Channel, doing like Disney Channel series. Like like Zack and Cody and that kind of stuff. And like it's such like that tone, like because this film, like despite being in this kind of broadly sex comedy kind of genre and kind of picking up a lot of these tropes, just it feels so fucking wholesome and so like saccharine sweet in a lot of ways, and so kind of like these low stakes. I mean, you could slot this into like those kinds of Disney films, and it would not really feel that out of place at this point.
This would be a Disney film if they toned the language down, because the only thing that is vaguely adult about this, other than maybe some of the innuendo, which you could show to kids and they wouldn't get it anyway, is the language. I mean, there's a couple times where characters say shit, and that's about it.
Right.
Yeah. So.
No. Rewatching this, it's hard for me to. I don't really have much to say other than, like, I did kind of enjoy revisiting this. It's probably not something I'm going to be revisiting anytime soon.
It's not going to be on my DVD shelf, let's put it even if it's on DVD anywhere.
Yeah. I watched it through Netflix streaming, so it is on Netflix streaming if you want to check it out. I don't know, anything else you have to say about Ski Patrol?
This one is sort of a lost film in a way as far as the genre goes, and with good reason, because it doesn't stand out. It comes off as a third-rate parody, well, not parody, but rip-off of the later Police Academy films, and in that regard, I mean, it deserves to be kind of forgotten. I mean, the only thing notable about it is for movie geeks like you and me who like go, oh, this guy was in that film, and this guy was in that film, and that's pretty much the only real interest to take out of it. Otherwise, it's, there's a few good gags, but it's not something anyone has to see. So
no, not at all. Don't like seek this out necessarily. But if you enjoy a little kind of goofy fun on a Saturday morning or something, it's worth popping up on Netflix if you're a subscriber to that wonderful service. We don't get paid by Netflix, but at least I don't.
I wish I did. I really wish I did.
Ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right. Then we're also going to talk about Zapped and Zapped Again. And I think maybe start with Zapped and then just kind of bring in Zapped Again. So we'll kind of talk about them together because it's kind of more interesting to talk about them together maybe.
Yeah.
But Zapped, again, with the exclamation point, if you're Googling it, that is the way to Google it, is a movie from 1982 with Scott Baio and Willie Ames, which I will say is the, pardon me, let me rephrase, the powerhouse charisma duo of Scott Baio and Williams. No, actually, no, these guys, Scott Baio, I'm sure a perfectly nice guy. He has absolutely no personality in this film whatsoever.
No.
They invented the word milquetoast to describe Barney in this film. Again, another film with a really interesting cast. Scatman Crothers is in this, and
love him.
Sue Ann Landon, I think. He's the principal.
And she went on to go into the sequel as well. Yeah.
She was, I think, the one returning cast member in the sequel. And I looked her up because I was kind of, I was just kind of Googling everybody. Whenever I watch like an old movie or an old TV show, I kind of have a habit of like Googling what these people ended up doing in the rest of their career, just because it's sometimes really interesting. One of the co-writer and director of this film, of Zapped, actually went on to executive produce an episode of Frontline in 2008.
Yeah.
And I was like, where did that come? Like, he's literally like a few sex comedies in the 80s. He does nothing else, and then like executive produces an episode of Frontline. And it's literally like either IMDb, there was another guy with the same name, and it got plugged into the same, into this. Or this guy had he said, I'm gonna get back into filmmaking, and I'm gonna be in some way involved in the making of a Frontline documentary. So I don't know. I think there's probably an interesting story as to how that happened.
Robert J. Rosenthal, the director, he actually did some movies that we're going to talk about later on in some future episodes of this sort of sex comedy series. He did Malibu Beach, he did The Van, he also did The Pom Pom Girls as a sort of a cheerleader exploitation film, written by him and Bruce Rubin. But yeah, it's got a really interesting cast. Like you said, Scatman Crothers, Sue Ann Langdon, who returns in the sequel, Heather Thomas as Jane Mitchell, the sort of sex pot cheerleader love interest of basically everybody in the film.
Right. The hot blonde in the film. Got it, yeah.
But she was she's probably the most notable cast member in this because she had a no nudity clause. Basically, she's basically saying she was going to do nudity. It even makes a point later in the end credits saying that Heather Thomas used a body double for her scenes in these films, even though it was blatantly fucking obvious anyway.
Right. Interesting thing. I mean, I support her decision. Yeah. So, if we're going to talk about the Zapped films, and this is the basic overall plot is teenage boy genius develops telekinesis, which is the subtitle of this movie should be "Lab Safety is for Suckers." Just kind of, fuck you, I want my superpowers. And how did a 17-year-old get his own lab space in a public school anyway? But we're not going to talk about these. This is the child prodigy genius. This trope goes back at least to the 30s, so we're going to let that go. But this is kind of, I think, viewed through at least modern eyes. Both Zapped and Zapped Again are Magic Sexual Assault, the movie. Because the entire premise of the film is teenage boy gets telekinetic powers and basically uses it to rip women's clothes off. Which, I think in 82, when the first one came out, we kind of, it's a little bit less, there was a little bit more of a, oh, boys will be boys kind of attitude. I think, watching it now with the modern sensibility, I mean, it does kind of play as, wow, this dude just ripped a bunch of people's clothes off because they were kind of mean to him, this is, and I don't necessarily want to get into that in detail, but I do think we should mention it if we're going to,
Well, let's put it this way: this theme, this sort of thing of a guy gaining either, I've seen it in other films. It's either the person gains telekinesis and can do it, rip their clothes off of his mind, or they become invisible and do it. And you see that pop up in a lot of Japanese movies these days. Like in the last 20 years, there's been a lot of Japanese movies that have revolved around that sort of thing. And those ones are really explicit and bad.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, again, kind of looking at all three of these films are kind of ridiculously wholesome in a lot of ways. Like it just doesn't deal with that idea. Like it just kind of, it doesn't even consider the idea that oh, maybe it's not the thing to do that ripping people's clothes off just because you can, sort of thing. It approaches it as a way of getting tits on the screen, and that it's a tit delivery vehicle essentially, which is it's a genre of film. We'll just
Well, it goes to that Benny Hill school of comedy. It's just instead of a woman getting her clothes hooked on something to rip them off, he's using his brain, he's using his mind to do it instead. I mean, that's essentially the only difference. It's very much the same sort of school of comedy, sexy ladies being disrobed, and, it's played for laughs.
One of the early Russ Meyer films involved a guy who got a sort of like X-ray glasses, essentially, that allowed him to see through ladies' clothes and, this sort of thing. So, this is a long and venerable genre of, if you just treat it as pornography, which, I mean, ultimately that's what this is it's pornography kind of wrapped in a silly comedy shell. I think it's less, it's not trying to make the point that, this is a good thing to do. It's just kind of, saying this is a way of showing you tits. And so, again, I don't think we should be too harsh on it, but I don't know, I would feel remiss if we didn't at least mention that's essentially the point of the movie.
The thing about it is this is essentially a Carrie rip-off spoof in a lot of ways, right? And the characters that get disrobed in this film are generally people who have wronged the Scott Baio's character in some way. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like this film is just like wall-to-wall nudity, because it's not. It's incredibly tame for what the premise is. Since this is a film back in the day, you and me are from the same generation where we still had video rental stores, and I'm sure you did a lot of the same as I did, where we'd go into these stores and you'd see the comedy section, and this was back in the day where VHS boxes had the best cover art ever, and the cover art for this fucking film is very, very tempting. Like,
I hope in the YouTube video version of this, you now have a picture of the video art for.
I'm gonna do it, because it has Willie Ames and Scott Baio looking through a window, lifting someone's skirt in a classroom, and I mean, you saw that, and you're probably too young to rent the film, and you're like, oh my god, I really want to see this film. I can't wait till I'm 18 and see this film. And then you see it, and it's like there are maybe 3 instances of him using his powers to disrobe women, and very briefly. I mean, there's the extended sequence in the end, in the prom, where he does it, which is basically the total Carrie ripoff spoof.
Right.
But other than that, I can only think of 2 instances where he uses it. He uses it once on the lead character, Heather Thomas, making her top pop off, although you don't see any boobs or anything. You just see her bra or whatever. And then there's the other part where he's at the baseball game, and afterwards some rival players drive up and try to make fun of him, and he makes the 2 girls' tops pop off. One of them, by the way, was Jewel Shepard, who is a very well-known 80s and 90s sort of both scream queen and sort of sexploitation star who appeared in a lot of stuff like Party Camp and other movies like that. But yeah, other than that, it's incredibly tame. Like, this film, its premise, it really does not cash in on its premise all that much. When you think about it.
I mean, really, I think watching the 2 movies kind of back-to-back, Zapped and Zapped Again, I do think Zapped Again does a lot more with its premise in the sense of like actually kind of being an effective delivery system for that sort of thing, which may just reflect the roughly 10 years that passed between the making of the 2. And I think the sequel was also direct to video, I think, which might have had something to do with it. But again, like, it's anytime you see in a movie like teenagers riding bikes, it's just one of those things. Like, it just feels like a bygone era to some degree. Like, it's kind of that. I'm this kid and I have, like the bad boy. By the way, Willie Ames, Bible man himself, bad boy, like bad boy playboy, total creepster, like taking upskirt pictures. I mean, this guy would be on Reddit today. Like, that's who this guy is.
Yeah.
But,
the only other thing I'd want to mention about Zapped, and if you have any other things to mention, you can do so right afterwards, and then we'll move on to Zapped Again. But I did like the sort of, they interjected sort of like stoner comedy into that film.
There was a surrealistic sequence that I was actually going to mention, so please go ahead.
Yeah, like the stuff of Albert Einstein and Scatman Crothers jumping in there, and like there's
having the salami flying after him.
There was some thought behind some of the stuff in this that I found very amusing and kind of funny. Like, this is a movie I'll still watch at this point. Like, I actually own this. I bought it in a dollar bin. I saw it, like, it was, actually, I think it was the same fucking day I bought Hard Bodies and Hard Bodies 2. They were both in the dollar bin. I was like, I could pick up Zapped and Hard Bodies and Hard Bodies 2 for like $2. Why not?
I would have made the same financial decision.
Yeah.
No, totally, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think, again, kind of, it's funny, like, talking about a, this kind of broad sex comedy that really just exists to show teenage, 22-year-old women with very little clothing. My favorite sequence in the film is the, kind of Albert Einstein, the Scatman Crothers get stoned sequence. That is, actually, he's probably my favorite character in the film, because, at the end in the prom sequence, he's kind of just wandering around like, oh my god, he's looking around big-eyed, like, if I were 40 years younger.
Yeah, well, he tries, and his wife stops him. But he's the best part of this movie, really, because he's the real actor in this movie.
Right. No, the other thing that I didn't remember is how much how much like a sitcom. One of the reasons I looked up these writers and stuff was like, I fully expected them to have been working on Charles in Charge. It was just one of those, like, you've got Scott Baio and Willie Ames, the dynamic duo there, coming in. Well, surely it was like, oh, this is going to be like, we got, like, the guys who are making Charles in Charge, to come in and do. No, it's not the case. But it's also like, it has sitcom structure in the sense that there's an A plot and a B plot, Yeah. And the B plot is Sue Ann Landon and the principal getting it on, and they have a very one of the funniest things in the movie is like they go to like the fancy restaurant and she like goes down on him under the table, and to the consternation of the diners and the waiters kind of coming by, and it's like, we'll have a house red, thank you, and very one of those, like, this is the fictional universe that this film exists in which this can happen and nobody loses their job.
Oh fuck, you're bringing up going down on someone in a restaurant. We have to do fucking Hamburger, the motion picture now. It just has to be done because there's a scene in that film. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go
seen
ahead.
That, but it's been a long time. No problem. Yeah. We'll definitely do. We'll just put together a list and we'll just keep doing these. The fun thing about these movies is that you can watch one and then you can like do it as like a 15-minute like thing at the end of another episode, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, one more point I was going to make about the original Zapped is just that there's very little plot at all. Oh, and the female lead, Bernadette, the actress, the only person who was actually of high school age at the making of this film, and it, therefore does not take off any of her clothes that you can see. She keeps her clothes on for the whole movie. I think is an interesting, like, they have this kind of romantic subplot between Scott Baio and her, and there is this kind of thing, one of the issues that bleeding heart liberals like myself have with these kinds of films is that, they kind of take away the agency from the female characters and they're just kind of like objects to be ogled, and there's not parody, you don't really see like men, you don't see the female characters like taking the men's clothes off and that sort of thing, because that's not the audience this is for, and so it's kind of structurally unfair to some degree. But you take your feminism where you can get it, and I think Bernadette in the first movie, and then the second one, the female lead business, they each have their own stories, they each have their own lives, their own opinions, and make their own romantic decisions, and I think that that's an interesting element that we could easily overlook.
Yeah, they do
character
carry that.
That's actually really interesting.
Yeah, they do carry that theme over to Zapped Again, where essentially the real, like, when you get past all the telekinesis and titties and ass showing up, I mean, it does make a point that the real story is between the lead and the lead girl. That is much more mature and realistic, and I mean, there is a little bit of a heart to the whole thing, you know. So it's nice. Like the film does balance those two things fairly well, especially considering, again, Zapped really falls short of its premise quite a bit, where it could be showing so much nudity and it doesn't.
Right. I mean, it could be a much more effective delivery system. So let's move on to Zapped Again, if you're good with that. It said that just as you were drinking a beer, so always fun. So moving on to Zapped Again, I think Zapped Again is unquestionably the better version of this story. And ironically, it was the one I saw first.
Yeah.
This kind of showed up on cable when I was a kid, and I saw it, many years ago. And then later learned, because it's kind of pre-internet, like you can just go Google shit, And then later learned, there was a first movie made years ago with Scott Baio was in this. So
it was exactly the same for me. This was the first one I saw in the series. Yeah.
It would be interesting to see a Zapped Again, like a third version. It'd be interesting to see what they do with this premise now. Although watching these films, and again, I'm gonna do a little aside here. The film Chronicle from a few years ago.
That has a little element of that, yeah.
But it again kind of takes that, like, teenagers get telekinesis and use it to kind of wreak havoc, and it actually treats this premise realistically. It's kind of like, I feel like that's in the same genre. Like maybe Barney from the first film, because you don't really learn what happened to him. Like maybe he ended up like building a spaceship, going up into space, and then crash lands 30 years later and like gives telekinesis to these three kids. Like, maybe Chronicle it. Maybe it'll just the same universe,
Yeah.
Would be an interesting premise. We should get on that. But anyway, so Zapped Again kind of fixes a lot of the problems from the first one. There's more nudity here. It kind of starts delivering it fairly early in the film. I mean, really, in the pre-credit sequence even has, kind of a sexy girl in the garter belt and stockings combo, which, by the way, is such, like, dates these films because, like, the sexiest girl is wearing a garter belt and stockings.
It's
and
so 90s Cinemax.
Right, yeah. Silk Stockings, if you remember that show.
Yeah.
That was, like, literally the credit sequence has that, image. And, I mean, even the name is supposed to be, like, Silk Stockings, versus Silk Stockings. So that's a show I need to revisit sometimes. Gilbert Gottfried was in that?
Was he?
He was. That's it. Yeah, no, sex comedies, man. I can talk about this shit for hours. Cinemax movies, because I watched a billion of these. When
you saw this on wherever you saw it, it was either Cinemax or USA Up All Night or whatever the fuck it was. Did you see the 4TV version where all the shots of girls getting their clothes ripped off, it just went to their underwear? Because there is a version of that, the TV version of this film.
I don't remember where I originally saw this. We did have pay cable for a while when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So I might have seen it on like HBO or Cinemax or something, or Showtime. But I honestly don't remember if there were actual tits in this when I saw it the first time or not.
Yeah, because there is a YouTube video out there. I can't remember where it is right now. I might link to it later on in the show notes and stuff. But there is one that compares the actual version to the made-for-TV version, where the part where the main girl gets her pants split open, you don't see her ass crack, you see her panties. The moment where the girl with the weights on the fucking carriage that they're pulling in the event, she gets her bottom ripped open and it's just, panties.
The idea of shooting for TV versions of these scenes is actually something that kind of still happens today. It's kind of I remember when the Kevin Smith film Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back was being made. George Carlin's little cameo. He has a sign that says, "We'll eat pussy for ride" or something like that. And like they had an alternate version of that, like "Free Love for Ride" or something, where literally even like they would shoot a different version of it. I think now they just assume that they can do all that shit digitally, for pennies, so they don't worry about it anymore. But it is interesting to see like some of the TV cuts where they actually shot different footage. But no, I can't remember what version I originally saw. I mean, this is a film that I saw when I was again like 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there, and just always remembered certain sequences, and I think we'll kind of get into that shortly. And I just like it made an impression on me, just as like, this is just a fun movie. It's just kind of one of those like, this is, I think, the best of the three movies that we're talking about today.
It is,
at least in my opinion, and I think partly because the male lead is actually likable and clever.
Yes, he's a cool guy. He's a cool guy. I mean,
he's that very dweeby cool guy that was like very briefly like kind of the cut rate Anthony Michael Hall, but the cut rate Anthony Michael Hall is still pretty cool, Yeah. He's kind of a smart ass, but he's not mean about it, that's the thing. Like he uses his smart assery against the people that deserve it and not the people that don't. He's still kind of a cool guy, he's still a nice guy. He's hanging out with the dweebs, which is always cool, he's hanging, the science club in the movie is kind of the Island of Misfit Toys, where they're just kind of hanging out. But he's got a lot of cool lines. Like I actually admired the writing on this. I thought that it was pretty cleverly done in the way that they kind of give him actually clever things to say, as opposed to the first one where Barney says, he might as well be the Great Silence, in terms of the actual, there's a pivotal scene in the original Zapped that happens without dialogue because they just, Barney goes into a store to talk to his girlfriend about something, and, they just film it from outside. They don't even bother. But no, do you have that actor's name handy?
Yeah, Todd Eric Andrews as Kevin Matthews, and I really liked his performance. I thought he was really good. This is just he's a good looking guy. He's got charisma. It's not even that he hangs out with the dweebs. This is the sort of guy that talks to anybody and hangs out with anybody just because he likes people, right? He likes talking to people. You get that sense from the character, and so I really appreciated that. It was like night and day from Scott Baio. Let's put it.
Right. Yeah. No, and it's not unrealistic for the two characters because Scott Baio is supposed to be this kind of nerdy science, the kind of kid that's doing research on rats and in his in his lab that he gets at the school, sort of thing. But he's supposed to be kind of milquetoast and boring. But the decision to actually kind of have this kind of cut up smartass is probably a really good one for the film. I think the best actor in the film is actually the female lead,
Kelly Williams.
Kelly Williams, who has done a lot of TV apparently that I haven't seen, but she's done some TV shows, some network shows.
She's fucking pretty as fuck as well.
She's
really good looking.
She really is, and it's very she gives a very credible performance. And she gets probably again, the first film kind of has these moments of surreal kind of lightness. One of my favorite kind of off the wall moments in this film is the Casablanca moment.
Yes.
Where she literally just the film literally goes black and white, which is amazing to me that that got somebody
someone stuck it there. Yeah.
I get that the director and the editor and everybody thought this was cool, but the fact that it ended up in the finished film, because I can just imagine a studio executive kind of looking at that going, "What? Who the fuck is this made for? What are you doing here?"
Yeah, why is she not showing her tits right now? What's going on?
Exactly. But it's a really fun moment, and I think she goes straight up. She's sitting there. She pours some of the magic prune juice formula, which another change is that they have this limited amount of prune juice, and you only get the psychic power, the telekinetic power when you drink the stuff, and it only lasts for so long. And they don't really play a lot with the rules, but there's kind of a limited amount. So where Scott Baio is just literally using the power to just do everything, in the first film. Here they use it in a lot more limited way, so it doesn't feel like it's just this magic superpower that he can just always just use to instantly win any fight. Lots of fun here. Linda Blair shows up as a
and I wish she was more of her in this film.
I would in more ways than one, if I may be lascivious slightly, because the moment where he raises her skirt in the film is one of those moments that I remember because of how shapely she is.
I'm wondering if it was her or if it was a stunt ass.
It might have been a body double. We don't know. It is not shot in a way that it is clearly her.
And interestingly enough, her name is Miss Mitchell. I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that they had the idea of trying to get Heather Thomas back, who was Jane Mitchell in the original film, but they couldn't get her. And I think she might have in some pre-script,
It
been
might have been supposed to be Jane, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That would have been an interesting moment. And, they kind of imply, we're getting into the mythology of the Zapped series, but, this is what movie geeks do, so, I'm fine with it. But we are literally getting into the mythology of but they kind of imply that, nobody really knew that Barney had telekinetic powers at the prom, but they definitely say, oh, he ripped off a bunch of people's clothes with some science magic trick or whatever. He just did something, like it was clearly him that did it, because he's the one walking around and like staring at people and their clothes rip off. So, people aren't idiots and they notice that. But I mean, it's kind of like we don't learn nobody, it's not like, oh, and then Barney, whatever his last name is, they give him a last name, but I forgot what it was. You don't hear, oh yeah, that guy who's like the evil genius in his lair, and realistically, we think like this is like a guy with telekinetic powers who is a super genius. Did he go on and found a software firm? Is he working for Microsoft?
Yeah.
So that's definitely a loose plot thread if you're going to talk about that. But the idea that people still remember, oh, there was this kid who did these weird things, and I remember he used to stare like that, and then people's clothes would come off.
Yeah. And
I liked the fact that Linda Blair, that Mrs. Mitchell responds to that in a kind of knowing way and in a kind of positive way, and something that I think is important in terms of kind of talking about the kind of quote unquote these sexual assault issues of these films is that the lead character Kevin, is it Kevin Matthews?
Yeah.
Kevin apologizes. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did that. I'm sorry. It was, and she kind of accepts it. It's sort of one of those she's kind of amused by it, and which I think
she's both because she makes mention that someone back in the day in my prom ripped all of our clothes off. And he apologizes, and he's obviously a nice, sincere dude, and she's kind of like, I'm kind of okay with the idea that you wanted to see me naked,
Yeah, no. I mean, yeah, it's a good performance. It's a good little moment. Speaking of which, this is, again, going back to the first film slightly, Willie Ames is fucking like a person that works in the principal's office in that film, at the beginning.
Oh, he seduces the secretary in the first film.
Yeah, he seduces, Willie Ames is getting action in that movie, anyway, sorry, we totally skipped over the fact that Willie Ames is both total creepster and is banging all the women in the movie.
Yeah, he's getting away with everything, that motherfucker.
Yeah, you just kind of imagine. Oh no, Willie Ames is the cockmaster here,
He's essentially awesome. Hugh Hefner in these films.
Yeah, no, he's I wish he'd come back for the sequel. I guess he was going off to do his fundamentalist Christian thing. So whatever, good for him. I wish he'd come back and he'd been like Rob Corddry in Hot Tub Time Machine, and he's the rich asshole, that's kind of what I wish he'd been. But no, going back to Zapped Again, the better film. I do think that there's a lot of fun stuff here. You get the kind of crazy hot dog stand and the kind of cast of characters. I mean, they're kind of
I love the hot
well drawn.
I love in the hot dog stand. It was not intentional. It was just something that I sort of gleaned from it. That the owner of the hot dog stand or the boss or whatever looked like Iggy Pop, and the black guy who's one of the employees looked like fucking not Little Richard, Chuck Berry.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I just found that personally amusing. That's just an
aside.
Yeah,
I can imagine visually that's just one of those bits that they included. I don't know. Overall thoughts about Zapped Again? Anything that stood out to you in particular, except just kind of fun movie?
Well, the thing I like the most about it is that it sort of, like we said, it capitalizes on the premise a lot better than the original film does. You definitely get more nudity for your buck in this one, but generally the performances are better. It's more fun. I like Lyle Alzado as the coach or whatever, and his relationship with Sue Ann Langdon coming back as Rose Bernhardt. They have a fun little sort of back and forth relationship where the coach keeps trying to impress her and try to pretend to be more astute and more sophisticated to try to seduce her and stuff. I found that fairly amusing. Even though this capitalizes more on the premise than the original does, I think they still could have maybe gone a little bit further. I could have done with more nudity personally.
Sure. I mean, it's still, and again, it's something that I keep coming back to and kind of talking about this, is that it's still an incredibly, I don't want to say G-rated, but just very likable, very, very. It doesn't go to like dark places. I mean, this is a genre of film where I suddenly have the magic ability to move objects with my mind, and the only thing I want to do with it is to look at titties.
Yeah.
Talking about like Chronicle, where they really explore the idea of what teenage boys would actually do with this power. It's again wholesome.
It's pretty innocent. Like even in this one, he's using his power. He's not using his powers in a lecherous way. I mean, he's using it to get back at the people who've wronged him. Like
right.
the main stuck-up girl, Maria McCann as Amanda, she's just using him to make her boyfriend jealous. And he gets that fairly early on, and he uses his powers to embarrass her and him. He uses his powers during the race twice. There's one point where one of his friends is in the mud pit or whatever, and the jock brings two girls in bikinis to distract them, and he makes their bikinis fly off. And then there's the sort of I guess horse pull kind of thing where he's trying to, and he makes the girl's bikini bottom fly off. So he's using it to get revenge on people. Like even in the end there, where they get the itching powder and everybody and stuff like that. It's made to punish the people who have wronged them. It's not some pervert running around like leering in windows and making girls' clothes fly off, for whatever. But
there is a dark indie comedy version of this that I'd love to see, where it's like, where like Rainn Wilson or somebody gets this power and he uses it to like, go and like look at 17-year-old girls in their underwear and stuff. Yeah, no, I really, again, this one is really enjoyable. I think the Zapped Again is probably easier to kind of watch in one sitting.
It is, yeah.
It's a lot. It moves pretty well. It moves pretty fast. It is very formulaic, and it's definitely not something that is going to change your life, but it's a lot of fun. The other big moment that I remember from this film is the where smartass Kevin is he's talking to the Italian sub, and he says, how do you say in Italian? Is your clam ready for my linguine? Mm-hmm. And her response is essentially to parry it right back at him. Now, the real question is your linguine ready for my clam?
And that was Karen Black. That was Karen Black. Genre star Karen Black, yeah.
Which, for me, again, it's just one of those, like, taking the female sexual agency and turning it again. Like, this guy is supposed to be, like, 15 or 16 years old. Like, at one point he says, I can't wait to get my driver's license. So that's why the actor looks like he's like 25. But, this is supposed to be kind of a young guy. And, you take him, he's being a smartass, and he's going to grow up. And he's actually pretty mature. I think one of my favorite scenes in the movie is the one where he goes on the date with the hot girl. And he essentially says, well, yeah, but your boyfriend doesn't treat you very well. And this, the meathead that, buys you all these gifts and stuff, he really treats you better, and essentially she ends up dating that guy, helping to make, even the people who are kind of the quote unquote bad people in this film are kind of like he looks upon them with empathy, which I think is, again, just really, it's a thing that doesn't have to be in the film. It's a thing that nobody was going to this film for like a like kind of honest look at relationships, but I think there is this kind of like very adult, slightly mature, like interesting bit buried in the center of this, titty comedy, and I like to highlight that stuff when it's there because go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, there's a lot more depth to his character than this movie deserves. I mean, let's put it that way. There is a lot more heart in this movie than one would think going right, just from the start. Like, oh, this is a movie about girls' clothes flying off. But no, there's actually, it actually treats it in a semi-mature way, even though it's just a dumb comedy. So
Right. I mean, at one point he almost literally says, I don't like bullies, no matter, no matter who they're picking on, I don't like bullies. He's like, I stand up for my friends, and I make sure that nobody has to eat shit. Which is, kind of it's a kind of a hero moment. It's kind of a, Again, way better than the movie that's basically designed to show you very ultimately tame, in
Yeah.
a 2015 context, this is ridiculously tame.
Yeah.
Like nobody is gonna like buy this just to be like, oh, I can't wait to see some tits. Like you can get on the internet right now. If you're listening to this podcast, tits are only a click away. I really enjoyed Zapped Again. I really enjoyed rewatching it. It was a lot of fun. And I don't know, where would you rank these three? Like,
Zapped Again's way better. They would be the top for me. Then I'd go Zapped, because Zapped, although it's very much more tame than Zapped Again, like we said before, it has really cool sequences, and it has some writing and some thought behind it. And Ski Patrol is incredibly derivative and incredibly tame for the genre it's supposed to be in. Like it's the tail end, pretty much, of this sort of genre, and it's easily forgotten and deservedly forgotten because it doesn't do anything.
The Wikipedia article for Ski Patrol is a stub, and I think that's all we have to.
Yeah, pretty much.
But Paul Feig is in it, and he's awesome, and he gets to get with the hot, vaguely European chick.
Yeah.
So there's that. Who again shows sexual agency in that she pursues him. So
yeah, she's attacking him. She's like, there's one scene there where she's like, I've been wanting to ask for your permission for so long to basically jump your bones, and then she does.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
So any more thoughts about any of these?
No, but a lot of fun revisiting these films, definitely, and I look forward to the next couple episodes where we revisit even more of these films, because like I was telling you offline, there's definitely several films in my collection that I wanted to do some podcasts about, and I'm actually excited now that we can actually do some about them, like some of the sort of proto-sex comedies from the late 70s, early 80s, and stuff like that we'll get into. So
definitely interested, yeah. So I think you've got a list and I've got a list, and we've been comparing a lot of notes offline about like which films we want to cover. So we'll probably just do some grab bagging here for a little while and have some fun with it.
Awesome.
Right.
So tell everyone about your awesome Doctor Who podcast.
The awesome one, or the... Oh, no, you're talking... Okay, the one that I do. Okay. No,
the one you do, yes. The awesome.
Oh, okay, not the awesome one. All right, sorry. Bad joke. No, if you want to listen to me talk about things that don't have explicit nudity in it, but are better than Ski Patrol most of the time, you can listen to the podcast I do with my wife about Doctor Who. We do classic and new series. We've been looking through a lot of companions and a lot of attractive ladies in the companions. But, we look at kind of a lot of the same stuff that I talked about here, kind of like looking at some of this stuff through modern eyes and modern values and deciding what works and what doesn't. And it's a lot of fun. And we're almost to the Tom Baker era where we're going to start talking about Sarah Jane Smith.
Yeah.
We're going to do a little bit of we're going to do a new series. We're going to kind of take a break from the classic. We're doing a new series soon, but the episode that will go up, that will probably be up by the time this airs, is actually the Time Warrior, which is Sarah Jane Smith's first story.
Cool.
And the first Centauran story. If you're a Doctor Who fan, you know what that means. If not, then you don't give a shit. But if you're a Doctor Who fan, I hope you go and listen to our podcast. It's a lot of fun.
Definitely, it's an excellent podcast, so you should check it out. People want to leave comments and stuff. The little trailer in the end is going to give you all the information you need to know. We definitely encourage comments, positive or negative. We want to engage people. We want to know we have a fan base. We want to talk to people, because this is what this podcast is all about, talking to people, talking about movies, and having fun. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thanks for suggesting this topic. We're going to do several episodes involving sex comedies, so very excited to get into the next couple episodes. And thanks Daniel for joining me tonight, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Yeah. Oh, and did you have any music you wanted to pick for the end here?
The only thing I thought of is that you should totally throw on the song from Zapped Again, which plays in the closing credits.
It shall be done.
Because it's kind of awesome.
Yeah. All right, guys. Bye-bye.
race to score on my reward. Gripped in hand at my command was a powerful secret potion. And in its depths were cool concepts for setting things in motion. The power, the rhythm, it's everyone's fantasy. I have the upper hand on everything. The curves will come to me. Making it with connections, and I knew for a fact I was gonna get zapped. I gotta have it. I gotta have it. She's got just what I want. She's gonna get it. Zapped again. East side, west side, driving down the boulevard. Suddenly I had company and I felt just like a rock star. Red light, yellow light, green light for Romeo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty maze all in a row to try. Eye to eye. Don't doubt the power in your mind. Cause when you find yourself with a dream come true, sitting on your lap, you are gonna get zapped. I gotta have it. I gotta have it. She's got just what I want. She's gonna get it. Zapped again. I gotta have it. I gotta have it. She's got just what I want. She's gonna get it. Game over, man. Now and then you get zapped again. For me, it's every day. To say la vie to everything that was standing in my way. But just beware to those of you that hiding from the trap. You are gonna get zapped. I gotta have it. I gotta have it. She's got just what I want. She's gonna get it. Zapped again. I gotta have it. I gotta have it. She's got just what I want. She's gonna get it.
Kids, don't you try this at home. We're trained professionals.
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For our other episodes, links to Daniel, Paul, and Lee's other stuff, and links to some great podcasts of similar interest, visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. There you can leave us comments on the site or directly email us. We listen and respond to everything. Thank you. Drive through.